Tune in for a tale, words that set sail.
Digital Splendor, Literature Illuminated.
Picture this. It's 1610 in Venice, and this tiny little pamphlet gets published. It's called the Sidereal Nuntius, or the Sidereal Messenger. And let me tell you, it didn't just make a splash. It was a thunderbolt that completely shattered a view of the universe that had been around for thousands of years. So let's dive in and see how one man, with one new invention, delivered a message from the stars that changed, well, everything. You see, Galileo knew he had something absolutely massive on his hands. He wasn't just writing this for stuffy astronomers. Nope, he aimed it at everyone. He was basically promising a front row seat to wonders nobody had ever even imagined, and boy did he deliver.
So, how did this whole revolution even get started? Well, it wasn't some grand, complicated scientific plan. It all kicked off with a rumor and a simple tool that was about to be pointed away from the Earth and up towards the heavens for the very first time.
You really have to get your head around this. Before Galileo, everybody believed the universe was this place of absolute perfection. The moon, the planets, the stars, they were all seen as these flawless, glowing orbs, spinning in perfect circles around us here on Earth. They weren't part of our messy world, they were something else entirely. And for over 1,000 years, that wasn't a theory, it was just fact.
And this is where Galileo's genius just explodes onto the scene. He hears about this spyglass and doesn't just go, "Oh, that's neat." No, he immediately dives into the physics of how it works. He uses his knowledge of optics and light, and instead of just copying the Dutch design, he experiments like crazy and builds something way, way better.
And the result? Whoa, absolutely astonishing. His first few attempts were pretty good, magnifying things about 9 times. But his final version, it was a beast. It made objects look 30 times closer, which meant they appeared 1,000 times larger. He had basically built a portal to the cosmos in his workshop. Now, all he had to do was point it up.
And what's the first thing you look at with your brand new super telescope? Of course, our closest neighbor in space, the moon. What he saw that night was the first huge crack in that old, perfect worldview.
The change in perspective was, quite literally, night and day. The idea of the moon being a perfect, smooth, polished orb, gone. Just poof. In its place was a world. A real world. It had huge dark patches he guessed were seas, and bright areas covered in rugged mountains. The moon was no longer just a pretty light in the sky. It was a place.
You can just feel his excitement in his own words here. He's looking at what we call the terminator, that line between the sunlit part and the dark part, and he realizes it's not a smooth curve at all. It's all jagged and uneven. And then he sees these little bright dots popping up in the dark part. What on earth could those be?
His conclusion was just brilliant. He realized he was watching a sunrise on the moon. It's just like here on Earth, when the first light of dawn catches the very highest mountain peaks, while the valleys are still wrapped in shadow. Just like that, the perfect ethereal heavens suddenly had geography.
And get this, he didn't just look, he measured. Galileo actually did the math. By figuring out how far those bright spots were from the line of sunrise, he calculated that some of the mountains on the moon were over 4 miles high. That's taller than any mountain anyone knew of on Earth back then. This wasn't just another world, it was a world with epic, massive features.
Okay, so the moon is a real place. Mind blown. What's next? Well, Galileo turns his telescope to an even older, deeper mystery, that faint, cloudy band of light we call the Milky Way.
For centuries, people had wondered what it was. A cloud? Some weird glow in the atmosphere? And then, with just one look through his telescope, Galileo solves the riddle. Just like that. The Milky Way wasn't a cloud at all. It exploded into a sea of stars. Just countless individual points of light, packed so close together. And it wasn't just in the Milky Way. Everywhere he aimed that telescope, the universe suddenly got incredibly crowded. In the constellation of Orion, he found over 500 new stars. The Pleiades, the famous 7 sisters? Turns out they had at least 36 other siblings hanging out nearby. Even those little fuzzy patches in the sky, the nebulae, turn out to be dense swarms of stars. The universe hadn't just gotten bigger, it was suddenly packed.
But as mind-bending as all that was, the biggest bombshell was still to come. In January 1610, he points his telescope at Jupiter, and he notices something odd.
What happened over the next few nights was basically a cosmic detective story. On January 7th, he sees 3 little stars in a perfect line next to Jupiter. But the very next night, he looks again and, wait a minute, they've moved. They're on the other side of the planet. How is that possible? A couple of nights later, one disappears. Then on the 13th, a 4th one pops into view. These were definitely not ordinary stars.
And then it just clicks, that incredible aha moment. He realizes it isn't Jupiter moving past some background stars, it's these little lights. They're moving around Jupiter. He had just discovered moons orbiting another planet.
Now, he called them the Medicean stars to get in good with his patron, the Medici family. But what he called them doesn't matter. What matters is what it meant. For the first time, humanity had clear, undeniable proof that not everything in the universe revolves around the Earth. There wasn't just one center to everything anymore.
So let's put it all together. Why did this tiny booklet cause such a massive uproar? Well, it wasn't any single discovery. It was the combined weight of all of it, slammed down on the table for the whole world to see.
The Sidereal Messenger was basically a knockout punch to the old way of thinking. You have an imperfect, rocky moon, just like Earth. Check. You have a universe that's unbelievably vast and crowded with stars. Check. And you have moons orbiting Jupiter, not the Earth. Double check. This was the first real, hard evidence, the smoking gun, that the sun-centered model that Copernicus had proposed was actually right.
So, with this little book, Galileo laid out the facts, exactly as his telescope showed them to him. He presented a brand new cosmos, one filled with incredible wonders and huge challenges to tradition and authority. The message had been sent. The only question left was, how would a world built entirely on the old ideas react to being told it was wrong? And that is a story for another time.